Hi, guys. Welcome to the Box Box Brunettes podcast. My name is Nicole.
And I'm Chelsea.
And welcome to episode 1. We are very, very excited.
We're here. We did
it. The idea left the group chat. Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. So if you can't tell, Chelsea and I are sisters.
I'm excited to talk about everything F1. I think it's really exciting. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but because Nicole has been into like the F1 world a little bit longer than I have, she loves the data. She knows the facts. She's super trending into that area. And I'm more, and I feel like this just goes with our personalities too. I'm definitely love the culture of F1, everything that's happening. I'm into the branding, the marketing. Give me all that. Give me all of the driver dynamics. I'm here for it.
So let's just get into it. Let's start with our Chinese Grand Prix recap. This was exciting, huge race, because obviously there hasn't been a race there for the last few years. So both a lot of drivers who had not driven on the track, as well as a few who had only maybe driven once, maybe twice, lots to expect. But I feel like overall, the expectation was that the front leaders, who are Red Bull and Ferrari, were going to dominate, possibly because of his past at the track. Lewis Hamilton was going to dominate as well, and pretty much everyone else was going to fall behind.
Red Bull is Red Bull. As we know, they're pretty dominant. I think Ferrari, so I'm a big Ferrari fan. Nicole is a big McLaren fan. So she was very nervous coming up to this race because the outlook for McLaren, I did have to say, was, not the most optimistic.
No.
And so, it was really interesting. We have a lot to talk about. So there's only a couple of sprint races. It's China. Then we have the next one, which is Miami, which I think will be exciting. The back-to-back sprints. Austria, Austin, which we'll be going to, Brazil, and Qatar. So very exciting. What are your just general thoughts about the sprint format?
I equally love and hate sprint weekends, to be honest, because I feel like it can help the race, but at the same time, I feel like depending on the conditions, it can also hinder the race. I honestly did think that the China sprint race was going to hinder the race overall, just because it wasn't going to give the teams enough time to really practice, adjust, get used to the track and the conditions beforehand. I'm 99% it was Carlos who said that he and Max were discussing how sprint weekends would be so much more fun, and how they've brought it up to the FIA that it should be reverse grid order. And I think that would be fantastic. I would love that. I think that would be such a fun twist on things. All of a sudden you've got Logan Sargent on pole and Max in the back, and that would be a sprint.
That would be actually really good. That's interesting.
Yeah. And they've been very vocal about it. They said that they've brought it up a few times. And I think that would be, obviously it would still provide the opportunity for the drivers to do additional testing and kind of see how their car works. But honestly, what an exciting probably experience for the drivers, but then also just for everyone who's attending the race as well. So, I would love to see a huge, huge change like that in the sprint racing. It's exciting. It is just kind of watching a mini race. So in situations like we had in China, where we had Lando on pole and it didn't exactly go how I wanted it to go, didn't exactly go how I'm sure he wanted it to go. I was honestly happy about that, because I felt like that he got that out of his system. He figured out what the mistake was, and then had, a much better opportunity to kind of redo almost the race. So, pros and cons in my opinion, for sure. But what a weekend, what a sprint. But I'd love to see some exciting changes in the future.
Yeah. I personally, so it was my first sprint that I've watched, and I loved it. I thought the weekend was so exciting. I sometimes think that, and I get why they do have so many practices. I think it's necessary, but I thought just the one practice made the whole weekend so much more dynamic. I think when we get to like the sprint and everything and the sprint qualifying, for sure, like teams are definitely still trying to figure it out. Right. And so I think that made it for me more exciting. I felt like the weekend flew by. I think, it does kind of like muddy the race and like the sprint kind of like combined together in my mind. It might have been because I was watching it at 2 a.m. in the morning. But other than that, like, I don't know. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was a cool change. I do love the thought of reversing the grid. And I think like the drivers would have so much fun with that. And just to give like Logan a chance, to like start on a pole position would be so fun. And then to see Max, like kind of what he does, it's probably would be exciting for him because he would have to get around so many people. And I think we would see like a really dynamic sprint race then. So that's really interesting. I love that.
One of the big things that was talked about as well is that the sprint format had changed, where previously teams were not allowed to make any changes between the sprint race and qualifying for the main race. But this time around they could. So that was another big change that I guess would, work into your favor if you make favorable changes from the data that you receive. I know it's very quick. Like you pretty much have 3 hours, I think, between the two. So you don't have much downtime or major time available for changes, but still a good opportunity for some fine tweaks based off of like the conditions and what you're experiencing on the track.
Yeah. First, we're back in China, which was exciting in itself because they hadn't been there because of the pandemic since 2019. So super cool track. Loved it. But we did have a little excitement from grass fires. I literally need to see so many more memes of the grass fires. I feel like they haven't had their moment on the internet. If anybody is watching this and sees them, please send them to our social accounts because I thought it was hysterical. I don't know if it was from a spark from a car or what, but like it had rained prior to the practice one. So the grass wasn't really that dry, but I just thought it was funny. And the guy or girl who makes the race recap comics, I can't wait to watch it because I feel like they're just going to hit the ground running with that.
I just remember you and I watching practice, and literally I freaked out as soon as I saw like red flag. I mean, not in a million years did my mind go to, oh, it's just a grass fire. No big deal. I was like, who just like flipped their car? Something's awful. Like this is the kickoff to like the Chinese Grand Prix, which everyone has been talking about in this horrendous way. And, there's this mega crash. So, I mean, it was so comical in a way. I don't know that anyone knew what to do or what to say.
So we had Stroll on top, followed by Piastri and Verstappen in third, which is crazy. But in hindsight, I think that's interesting that I think, McLaren,
insane.
I don't know how they felt about their pace at that moment, but it is interesting that we did see Oscar in P2 in practice one.
There was a moment I can remember like looking at the screen and seeing, I think it was like the Williams at the top. And then I think it was like, it was just crazy. It was like completely backwards.
And it was good. And then things changed a little bit for sprint qualifying because it got super rainy. Everybody was kind of slip sliding around out there. But that's when we saw Norris, your favorite, come out on top, followed by Hamilton and then Alonso.
I know. And I personally was, obviously really excited about pole for Lando. I was surprised, like you had mentioned, that the Ferraris were not to be seen kind of around there. I mean, Red Bull was also struggling at the time. But one of the main things that surprised me is that Carlos is also very, very good in the rain, typically. Like he's one of the best in the rain and wasn't on the top either. I felt like it was very interesting.
But it's okay.
A whole weekend of surprises.
But I'm happy for the McLarens. I really am. I'm really happy.
The pipeline of fans who I feel like between McLaren and Ferrari, like those are their two favorite teams, maybe not a huge even like poll between like the favorite and the second favorite is huge. And I think that speaks volumes to like the attitude of the teams and their values and the drivers that they have. I think it's just it's a good combo.
Unfortunately, Lando had a less than ideal start. He fell back a couple positions on turn 1 and 2 there. We were left with Verstappen in first, Hamilton in second, and then Perez in third. So what did you think of the sprint? I thought it was pretty good. I was kind of rooting for Hamilton to get the win. I just really wanted him to have a win, but I'm happy. I think he was happy to be in second and to see a little bit of performance from the car. He did say he learned a lot about the car in the sprint, which was interesting. From then the position he was in for qualifying for the race, he did fall back. I think it was to 18 was the start for him for the race. But I was really happy with his performance. What do you think?
At first, I was a little upset because I knew it was going to be tough for Lando to fight off all of these just mega drivers behind him, even for just a sprint. So I was nervous for sure. Upset because I felt like, Lewis did not give him much of any room. He really had a hard time being on the outside, holding onto that corner, and that definitely cost him several places in the first turn. However, by the end of the sprint, I was excited that Lewis made it to podium. I thought it was really funny how afterwards he just like jumped out and then like immediately just gave like the Red Bull car like a whole evaluation.
I'm gonna check it out. Like the cameraman, I'm so glad. Yeah, he was like staring the Red Bull cars down. It was hysterical. I loved it. And then we got to the race. And what are your thoughts about the race? I thought it was a very good race. I'm interested to see your thoughts. It's a little blurry for me because I did wake up at 2 a.m. to watch it. So I just remember it was good. But what are your thoughts, your initial thoughts?
It was a great race. Very excited. Always happy to see Lando or really either of my McLaren boys on the podium. So super happy for him. I think he did a great job just kind of defending and some fast overtakes in the beginning. I was very stressed around lap 19. I specifically remember like looking and being like lap 19 because that was when like Lando hadn't pitted. They were talking about doing a one stop, just like Charles. And I was like, if this does not go well, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, why would we necessarily, with his track record, be taking strategy advice from Charles? Probably not the best move. And then, of course, there have been some bad strategy decisions that I feel like in the past few races this year have cost Lando a few positions. So I was concerned about that. However, the safety cars did come around, played into Lando's success really well, I believe. And I was very, very stressed until I saw those happen. I do think it could have been a different race had we not had the safety cars. I do think that it could 100%. Have played out a little bit differently. Now, talk to me about those safety cars, Chelsea.
The safety cars. Well, I agree. I was very worried for Lando for that one stop. I thought, Charles last race, he did a pretty good job of managing the tires. Ferrari and all of their plans, apparently the plan D, I think we can all deduct from this. Who knows if it'll change next race, but I think that's a one-stop plan. And so, I was a little concerned, but the safety cars definitely played a key factor there. And I think everybody kind of leveled out. And then, we saw that the safety car was ending. And then we had, which I think is a pivotal moment of the race and something definitely that we can talk about, which was the Stroll-Ricciardo crash. Craziness. In my opinion, yes. I think Stroll is at fault for him. And I think Daniel Ricciardo was very heated after the race. He said he calmed down, but I don't think Stroll really took accountability for the crash. I think it's pretty clear in Lance's cam that he was looking the other direction and he was not on his brakes at all and just hit the back of Ricciardo, who in this race kind of felt really bad for. He was having a really good race. And I think at that point was either close to scoring points and scoring higher than Yuki, which he, as we all know, really needed. And, I thought this was going to be the race where he could turn it a little bit around, and for Lance to hit the back of him. And for Lance, the thing is, Lance was able to continue the race, and nobody else that was affected in that crash was able to continue and had significant amounts of damage. I thought it was crazy. I could say a lot more, but I'll leave it at that.
I agree 100%. I think that Lance is at fault without a doubt. I think that I saw this quote from Oscar Piastri, and he was like, everybody had to slam on their brakes, but nobody else caused a crash. And it's I think that kind of explains it best. It wasn't obviously an ideal situation. I mean, I think about many times when you're just driving on the road and that's the situation. If everyone slams on their brakes, you too may have to slam on your brakes. But if you're not paying attention and you cause a crash, you can only really blame yourself because everyone else was able to stop, slow down. He was not being attentive. And I think that was reflected, like you mentioned, in his camera. I mean, you can clearly see that he was not looking.
And it was after that pretty smooth sailing, I would say, for the rest of the time. The race got going again, and we ended up there was a little bit of damage from a car on the track. And at the last lap of the track, Max ran over the damage. And I thought I was awake and you were asleep. And I thought I live was going to see Lando get his first win ever in his career because Max had tire damage and he radioed in to have them check. But as we all know, Max was able to get away with it. He ends up winning the race. Lando got P2, which was great. I thought it was a great performance from him and McLaren. They were able to split the Red Bulls by a good margin too. And they were able to grab P2 and then Checo in third place. But crazy end to the race. But I was very, very happy for Lando.
The only other big jump outs to me were Valtteri's car, just engine going out. The fact that he just gets out of his car, that he's driving at nearly 200 miles per hour, hops on the back of a scooter and just passenger princesses it. And then also the shot just cracked me up of when they're talking about, is this going to be a virtual safety car? Is it going to be upgraded to a safety car? The stewards are struggling to get the car, moved. And then they pan over and there's got to be 20 stewards just trying so hard to move this vehicle. I don't know why that had me cackling so hard while I was down here, like sipping my coffee. It was just so funny to me. But those were like the other little like laughable moments for me out of this race.
Where do you want to go next? Do you want to go Carlos team predictions for next year? Or do you want to talk about the Austin artist predictions?
Knowing that we are sisters and we can be a little bit competitive, I want you to think about where in your gut you think Carlos is going to go. We can debate it afterwards. I will do the same. We can say them at the same time and see if we agree or disagree.
Okay. Ready?
And yeah, so we'll count 1, 2, 3, and then we'll say it.
Okay. And mine has changed over time, but we'll go out into that later. But okay, ready?
Yes.
1,
2, 3. Audi.
Red Bull. What'd you say?
Okay. I said Audi.
Okay. Hot take. I think
who's going to be correct?
Yeah. What's the bet? How much? How much are we willing to cash out here? I think.
Okay.
So my prediction. Carlos is definitely, if not my favorite driver, definitely one of my top 3 favorite drivers. So if you asked me a couple of weeks ago, which it still might be an option, not sure, but I thought about a month ago that Carlos was going to go to Aston Martin. Since that time, Fernando has extended his contract with Aston Martin. I'm not saying it's not a possibility because they still haven't secured a Lance, which I could talk about for another 10 minutes probably. But it's looking like probably maybe he's not going there. So then when Carlos is asked about what team he's going to next year, he says he wants to go to the team that can get him to win. He wants to win the championship, which I think is valid because he is turning 30 and 30 is young, but as a driver,
I was literally like, please tell me about 30.
Yeah. But as a driver, I think he is in his prime, but I think 30 is kind of middle-aged in the driving realm. With that being said, I think the one team right now that he has the best bet and the easiest, probably just straight and narrow path to winning a championship is at Red Bull. Mm-hmm. And that's a side of my opinions of Red Bull, which again is another side topic. But I think he will probably go to Red Bull just because it gives him the most secure chance at winning a championship, which him and Max kind of battling it out, I think is really exciting. And I think could bring a lot of dynamic nature to Red Bull. Yeah, I think that is my bet. You talk about yours.
So I was 100% with you. Mm-hmm. And I completely believed that he was going to go to Red Bull, and I was behind it because I feel similarly. Like, I would love to see Max be challenged, there not be like a strong first and second driver, and they're just like going head to head and really bringing like a lot of excitement to potentially what could be, hopefully not, but what could still be this like, long path to Red Bull domination. Now, this has since changed. This has since changed for 2 reasons. Number 1, I have been historically listening to Carlos Sainz podcast interviews. Okay. In 2018, he was in.
Oh, wow.
In 2018, that was a big year because at the end of the 2018 season, he was ending his 1-year contract with Renault and he was moving to McLaren. And that was a big move because they were talking about how different McLaren was going to be, how McLaren was going to be his first 2-year contract. Obviously, then he went on to Ferrari after that. But he talked a lot beforehand about before he went to Renault, he was at Toro Rosso, and which was AlphaTauri, which was V-carb. And when he was there, obviously, he spent like a solid 3 years, if you kind of consider Toro Rosso being the junior team of Red Bull. He really spent 3 years working with Max and driving with Max. The first full year, they were teammates, and then Max got moved up to Red Bull. He was still at Toro Rosso for the next 2 years. But although he has that good relationship with Red Bull as a whole, with Max, and I think that could, kind of go back and continue. He specifically stated in that interview, which I know a lot has changed since then, but he specifically stated in that interview in 2018 that he felt like he had to make a decision, which was like, should he stay at Toro Rosso and like potentially one day be promoted to a Red Bull seat? Or like literally he said, like, should he leave Red Bull knowing that could hinder his ability to go back to Red Bull if there ever was a Red Bull seat available in the next few years? And he said like he weighed his options at that time and determined that going to Renault and like pursuing opportunities with other teams was going to be the best move for him in his career. So that was number one, kind of. I know, obviously, like I'm not the same person I was in 2018. So a lot could change. Do I think that he will want to go back there or do I think that they will still want him? Possibly. And I think that would be a good move for him if he wants like a great car. However, I don't know how confident they are that they would want to get rid of Checo, because Checo is putting up like consistent, second places behind Max all the time. It's like if you have a great driver who knows how to drive your car, you're not going to be in any rush to get rid of them, which I know it's like, the classic, is it the car? Is it the drivers at Red Bull? Like only Red Bull probably knows. So that's kind of why I have shifted. Now, I know that Sauber / Audi / Steak, whatever we want to call them, Steak, Sauber, Audi.
Kick.
Yeah, Kick, Steak, Sauber, Audi is not going to be, a great car or team to be in 2025. However, if I was the CEO or the team principal, I would definitely try to recruit a top driver, and I would want one who is very, very good at strategy and providing feedback to improve a vehicle. And I really don't think that you could find a better driver who's looking for a contract than Carlos to fill that gap. Now, of course, nothing has been advertised or,
I have to interject here. But do you think, I was thinking about this today, deep in thought. Do you think if Carlos took Checo's spot on Red Bull and Checo went to Audi, don't you think, because he's a seasoned driver as well, do you think, because he would be on the market then, and don't you think that he could provide the same level of feedback as Carlos could in that seat?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
The main reason that I say no is because I think that comes not only from experience, which obviously both of them have, but I think it also comes from being the number one driver in a team. And I think that Carlos has had those years. I mean, he was pretty instrumental at Renault. Then he was the lead driver at McLaren. He's had a lot of input and strategy at Ferrari. And I think that he's consistently shown that. I mean, just even this year where he was like coaching Oliver Bierman on how to drive his car and like what strategy he should use and all these things. Like the other day I had told you, like, I think that Carlos could easily be team principal one day because like mindset wise, I just think that he is there. So I think like if it were me, like I said, if it were me, I would want to offer him, and I was Audi, I would want to offer him like the best contract to try to get him. Now, I don't know that he would necessarily want to take it because like I said, I mean, I think it's going to be a little bit of a rough 2025 before we get into 2026. Make sure you're, subscribed to the Box Box Brunettes podcast when Chelsea lets me talk all about the 2026 powertrains because it's coming and I can't wait to lecture about that. But yeah, my opinion's changed. Wouldn't be mad about seeing him at either. It's just, my latest.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. And I think from what you said too, like, I think the future Audi team has offered him, from what it sounds like, a very lucrative contract. Like, I think they're definitely pushing for him, as they should, because that would be a great driver for them to have in one of their seats for sure. And then we know, as we know too, Mercedes, something came out as well saying that they offered him a contract, but I don't think it didn't sound like that was the one he wanted to take because of the length of time. And yeah, I do think Red Bull is in the mix as well as Audi. So we'll see. I'm so excited to see how this all plays out. I think it is going to cause a chain reaction of events afterwards, as far as like the other seats that still need to be filled for the upcoming year.
Plot
but
twist.
Exciting
Carlos
times.
Sainz goes to Williams.
Yeah, no, crazy. It could be crazy. I think the big options, honestly, would be Red Bull giving him a contract. I think Audi's going to give him something. Mercedes, as we know, has talked to him. Maybe Aston Martin. I think outside of that, I think those probably are his options, but who knows? We will find out. Okay, we are excited about this because it's going to be our first in-person race that we are attending. So we're super excited. But it came out this week from Circuit of America themselves, which is the race venue, that they are trying to buy back people's tickets, general admission tickets, so that they can resell them, because they said, quote, that the artists are going to have, once they announce it, it's going to be a bigger deal than Taylor Swift. So that sparked, between Nicole and I, predictions. I will just quickly say who I think it was going to be. The first person that came to my mind was Beyonce. I think because she has the new album, because she has Texas roots, I think it might be her.
Beyonce would be awesome. Definitely would boost the ticket values.
For sure.
100% in agreement with you. Like,
because
she's
hasn't
got the new
even
album.
announced.
She's from Texas.
Yeah, she hasn't even announced a tour yet. So that's why I think it could be her, is because she just dropped this album and everybody is like, oh my gosh, is she going to go on tour? And so that would be like the first kind of show that she would do. So, and then I think there will be, which I'm super excited about, I think some DJs for sure. I think that's a classic in a Grand Prix weekend. I think Fred again is available, who I would be super excited to see, or Calvin Harris. They're both free during that time. So we'll find out next week. I'm super excited to see who we get to see on top of seeing the race and a sprint weekend. Yeah.
I know.
It's going to be such a good weekend.
I'm so excited. I can't even wait. Oh, I'm in love. And hopefully, I mean, that's in October. So we should have some of the craziness of the driver market solidified by then. A good portion of it, I would say. So we'll know more about where everyone's going to kind of go.
Yes.
Because that's definitely towards the end of the year.
Perfect. Well, I think that wraps up our first official episode of Box Box Brunettes. You guys, we're so excited to get this kickstarted. It's going to be great. Follow us on the journey. That's all I have to say. Yeah. Follow the journey.
Follow us on all of our social medias. They're all at Box Box Brunettes. And thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
We're so excited to be here.
We'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.